Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my podcast. I've got next. Today, I have a friend. We worked together 3 years ago, 4 years, somewhere around there.
Definitely
Not gonna
pushing
say the
about
name of the
4.
company, but she's also a recruiter, so that's how we met. And we also connected on the fact that both of us have started startup companies. So go ahead, introduce yourself. Her company is Playing for Keeps, and it's really, really interesting. So go ahead and introduce yourself and your company.
Got you. I go by DJ Robinson for my company. It is called Plan for Keeps, and it is a dating app that is focused on self-awareness and conscious dating. So I am looking to expand it now here in Atlanta. When two people match, they have to play a compatibility game based on sex, emotional intelligence, attachment theory, and love styles. So that's a little bit about my company. Right now, I am doing events all around Atlanta. Our first event is next month, September 26th. It is a dating game event. If anybody is interested in that, you can go ahead and check me out on Instagram at Plan for Keeps app. And I'm that name on all platforms.
Okay, okay. Now you also do a podcast. Tell me a little bit
I
about
do.
that.
So I do have a podcast where I invite dating coaches and therapists to come on once a week, and we tackle different topics within dating and relationships, whether it's talking about the subconscious mind and why we do the things that we do. We talk about childhood trauma and how it affects us within dating. We talk about compatibility. We talk about do's and don'ts within dating, just everything involving dating, relationships, mental health, therapy. We talk about all that. And then I have another segment where I invite people to come on to give a funny or crazy dating story. And then we'll dissect into that story and get the lessons that that person may have learned from that experience.
Interesting,
So,
because I've heard about this before, but probably about a year ago. I was supposed to be on that podcast, but I'm not going to talk. We'll get to that later. We'll talk about that later. Um, how? Let's talk. Let's dive a little bit more into your company and you, because we met as actual recruiters, and we still both recruit on top of our
yeah.
company. So, how do you balance
Whew.
working and then also being a CEO? Because everybody thinks it's easy, or people say, "Oh, you can't work; you got to throw yourself in your company," which to me doesn't make sense because I still have bills to pay
Right.
and mouths to
Um,
feed. So how do
Absolutely.
you balance
It's not an easy juggling act. Many sleepless days, nights, sometimes just depending. Um, for me, it's really just being motivated and knowing that I believe in what I'm creating, and that's what keeps me going, because it's not easy juggling and balancing. But I guess what I do is really prioritize my day. Like, okay, I'm gonna spend a few hours. I work from home, so it makes it a little easier. So you dedicate a few hours to work heavy. Make sure you do what you need to do so certain people aren't looking for you. And then if you got to dedicate some time to your business, then you dedicate some time to your business. And then just balancing that along with everything else that I have going on in my life. It's kind of how I do it. Just setting up schedules and trying your best to stick to those schedules.
that? Okay. So, what does your team look like?
Ooh. So throughout this process, because when I first started building the dating app, I got dubbed. I got dubbed by the first development team that I worked with.
Real quick,
Um,
what does that mean? Not sure everybody knows what that
Dubbed.
means.
So
What is
basically, I my friend introduced me to somebody who was a tech guy, and he was supposed to connect me with an app developer at a cheaper rate, because at the time I only had about 15 grand to get started, and I ended up losing that whole 15 grand. Like, it didn't work out the first time around, so I ended up having to find another developer. So my team is, I have a contractor, of course, who helped me create the app. And then it's really just me. I just hired kind of like an intern, part-time intern, but she's paid, and she's helping me with social media and stuff like that. So right now, if you want to count that person, it's really just us two.
okay? Okay.
So yeah.
Now let's go back to that story, and I don't want to get too much into it. And I'll tell you my
Okay.
story first.
Okay.
Trying to get government contracts. This is me. I meet this person through another, like you said, I met him through a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Call. was kind of iffy. But I'm like, let me give him a chance. Wound up paying like $2,500 for him to come back to me 2 weeks later, and say, I can't do anything that I told you I can do. So you're not the only person who have put some money, not as much as you, but I didn't have the 2,500, by the way. This was all credit cards.
That'd be the worst.
At the time, I didn't have it. I did not have it. But one thing I learned, because I'm going to ask you what you went through and a little bit more, and then what you learned. What I did learn was that I called my credit card company, sent them the email saying it was fraud, and I got all of my money back. So I'm so glad I used credit for this particular. It was my business credit card. Sent them everything. They got me all my money back. So you're not the only person who have kind of put your faith in somebody, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is going to work out. This is what I needed to get to that next step. And you turn around and be like, what the hell just happened?
Right. My story is kind of crazy. So, like I said, I met this, he's more of a tech guy through a friend of mine who was like, yeah, he's great. He's built my website, blah, 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 this, that, and the third. And I looked at her website and I looked at other ones and I felt the websites were mediocre, right? Because I know how to build websites too. But the fact that he could connect me to developers overseas that could help me was what kind of attracted me to him, because I didn't have that connection. And yeah, I could look up, people on different sites, but just trusting that person, my friend, thinking that connection was valid, I went ahead and I moved forward. So he talked a really good game. And for a year, I gave out money expanding for a year. He would show me little things that were being worked on, but nothing serious, just enough to keep me paying until it got to a point where I was like, okay, it's been a whole year and there's no product, there's no app, there's no nothing. Like, I haven't even been able to talk to the overseas team that you've been working with. Like, what is going on? So I had Legal Shield and, try to go through the process of trying to recuperate my money, something. And unfortunately, I lost all of that money and had to start over. And luckily for me, what was going on during the pandemic, the PPP loans. So I was able to get a PPP loan, and I ended up doing my own research, for real, like doing my own research, interviewing different app companies, looking at what they've done within the app stores and stuff like that. Something I should have done in the first place instead of relying on a friend. And I ended up hiring another company called Code and Pixels who helped my vision come to life. So I didn't get any of my money back. And the lesson that I learned, because I've even wasted a little bit more money along the journey. Sometimes you got to pay for mistakes, so you can go in the right direction and really do it right. So that's kind of what I've learned. Like, it was even another time where I got with somebody who was in marketing, and, he was supposed to really help grow the app and expand. But unfortunately, my app still wasn't ready yet, and I thought it was going to be. So I think I spent about $5,000 on that. But he gave me a lot of valuable information during the time I had with him that I implemented in the app. So somebody might be like, well, you wasted a whole bunch of money because you wasn't able to grow it the way you wanted to in Atlanta. Not due to that person's fault, but he gave me a lot of things that I could use to implement within the app, which I have now. So I don't count that $5,000 as a waste. Even the $15,000, like, yeah, I got dubbed, but it taught me, okay, moving forward, you need to do, your own research, your own stuff, if you want something done right. So that's what
I tell people all the time, it's not a straight line of success.
Right.
Hills, valleys, bumps in the road. Sometimes you want to quit. Somebody gives you that last bit of, okay, let me try this, and it works. There are so many different ways. Nobody just wakes up and is successful without, like you said, going through some losses. So you do a lot, because we actually have a personal relationship. So I know how much you actually do. From doing what we do as recruiters, and just being in the workforce, How has that helped your company? Like, what lessons have you learned from actually having a job that has helped you in what you're doing now?
So as a recruiter, like I just mentioned, interviewing, really being able to interview and doing research on people. Like I learned that from being a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
And also being able to talk to people. So another thing with what I do now and how I want to grow my business, I want to really be able to touch people. I want to really be able to communicate effectively with people to help them understand being self-aware while dating and what that looks like for real. And I feel like my career as a recruiter has helped me with all of that. So yeah, in everything I do, I feel like my career has helped.
Okay. So about the app, which I was actually on, I switched my phone and it won't work on my new phone. So we'll talk about that when I get off. And it's not your fault, it's my fault. It kicked me out. So
Well,
trying to get
yeah,
back
because their profile's still on it too. I somebody else was testing and they were like, okay, Will won't match with me. And
it,
I'm like,
it's phones. So let them know it's not personal. Like send them this. Like it's not personal. The app, the icon is on my phone. I just got a phone maybe 2 months ago, something like that, and it won't.
uninstall and reinstall. We're gonna talk about it after, like you
We'll talk
said.
about it after this. But
Okay.
first of all, I want to congratulate you on the app. It's an actual
Thank
app.
you.
Because
Thank
I've heard this before. I'm like, oh, let me see the app, and it's like crickets. No, you was like, Will, take this, click this button, and it popped up on my phone, and I could put my pictures up, had to answer some stuff. It's an actual app. Okay, so let's start with that. So I'm very
you.
proud of you for that because we've had the
Thank you.
conversations.
Yeah.
And I'll say this: you, Milky Melanin, Shalina, Toya, I can talk to you guys about the frustrations I'm having, which I think everybody needs. You need a team of people who are going through the same things that you're going through, because they might be able to say, "Hey, try this," or "I did this and this
Right.
worked." Like I definitely thank you for that because there are sometimes I like banging my head against the wall. So I want to know your story on how you came up with this, because a lot of things you're talking about I didn't hear about emotional intelligence and things growing up. We didn't hear none of that at all.
Right.
It was just
I have
dating, find
crickets
the
on
right person, go to college, get married, have the 2.5 kids, get the house, get the picket fence, and that didn't happen for me. Let me just say
it.
that.
Yeah. Me too.
So
Right. So
when you talk about
uh,
emotional intelligence and childhood trauma, these are words probably in the last maybe 10 years that have been like
that's been
buzzwords.
really
They've been around the whole time.
right.
So talk to me a little bit about how you came up with this, because the app is really like, for people to get on it is really like, for me, it's groundbreaking.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I had so just a little bit about me. In relationships, I've always been the type of person. I'm either a super people pleaser or I'm somebody who um I'm a doer. I'm a doer. And I never would say too much of what I needed, what I wanted. We'll start there. And I ended up getting with this guy who, it wasn't, the relationship was kind of, it was kind of the best relationship I ever had, but it also was very rocky. And out of nowhere, he broke up with me. And in the past, I normally was the one to do all, like, I'm breaking up with you. I'm tired, because I was always constantly doing, and I got to a point where I was like, okay, I can't do anymore, and I'll break up with the person, and then I move on, not really thinking of reflecting on, like, okay, what was I doing in a relationship? Why I kept running into these cycles with these different guys, all of that. This time this guy broke up with me. And it shattered me because I felt like I put so much into that relationship. But it opened up a window for me to really look at myself. Like, okay, why did this relationship end? And it kind of, it set me on this journey of like self-discovery, learning about setting boundaries, tying back my childhood to why I dated the different kind of guys I did. For me, in order to feel love, I needed to feel needed. I needed to feel resourceful. So if a guy was kind of stable, to me, he came off boring. But in reality, it was my nervous system not being able to adapt to a new situation. So anyway, I learned all these different things, and then in that last relationship, I always try to get this guy to take different tests, even though I didn't even really fully understand emotional intelligence back then myself, or love language tests. I tried to get him to take these tests, and he never would take it. So the idea came up like, damn, wouldn't it be dope if I could create a dating app, because I met him on a dating app too, trick these guys to take these tests, and then we'll know where the love language is, where they fall sexually before we even message each other, or attachment theory. When you play the attachment theory game, you'll know if a person is a dismissive avoidant, or if they're anxious, or you'll know all these things before you get to the messaging phase. So I was like, wouldn't that be dope? So, and even creating the app, my journey kind of changed, because like I just said, my goal was to trick guys into taking these tests. But as it progressed and as it grew, I continued to learn even more about myself and things I needed to change. So it became more of a, no, we all need to know these things and grow as human beings so we can better our relationships and get to the 2 kids and white picket fence and all of that stuff. Because now, with us evolving as human beings and wanting more and speaking up for ourselves, men and women, it's getting more trickier than what it was back in the day. So, yeah.
So by going through this, did you figure out what you needed?
I did. So, I figured out more of what I needed. Like I'm still in self-discovery mode and what I really want in a relationship, to be honest with you. But as far as what I needed, setting boundaries, learning to say no, those are things that I needed. And even like I said, really being able to break the cycles. So yeah, I did get a lot of what I needed, like being able to dig back into childhood and connect the dots for certain things for me. So yeah, and that's helped me stay grounded as far as not just getting with anybody, because I've been single for a while now. Because me and the guy broke up, I want to say maybe 3-4 years ago. So I've just been in this mode. And if I do start talking to somebody and I see a red flag, immediately, like, no. So I feel like I've grown a lot through this journey, and I've gotten what I've needed so far.